Okay guys, so this is another element of, trying to encompass everything that people have asked me in questions to all the gear. I started out on just my cell phone, which is the best. I was on iPhone for years and then worked my way up to a Nikon D5300, and then I worked my way up to a Canon 60D, and then a Canon 60, and then A7R2. Now it's A7R3 and A7 III. So yeah, again, I worked my way up in my gear as my level of experience worked its way up. I didn't just start out with just the most sick camera possible because of complications. I need to understand how light works, how what f-stop means, ISO, shutter speed, all that stuff. So for me, I've always said gear doesn't define your value. It's only limits you once you understand everything that you need and what you want to get. So for me, these are all the lenses that I use all the time. I either carry this one or this one, but I'll get into that. Yeah, seems like it's always on my back. That's why I have back problems, or in my backpack. But yeah, I'm going to kind of dive into each piece of this and why I use these lenses. So, for instance, this macro lens is a 90mm 2.8. I shoot with all Sony glass and Zeiss glass. It's all Sony E-mount. And I shoot with the A7R2, well, not anymore, the A7R3, the A7 III. Those are both being filmed as we speak, otherwise they'd be up on the table. But I just wanted to, touch base on these lenses and kind of why I use what they, why I use them. So anyway, the 90 macro is really sweet. This is for good detail stuff of video. I think that's a huge plus. I think that it adds a different element. It's not used all the time, but it is something fun. Okay, now that I've chatted about this 90mm macro, I'm going to step into this gnarly, huge beast. This is something recent for me, something that I want to kind of diversify my focal length range, and it's the Sigma 105 1.4. It is a gnarly, fat, massive weighted lens, but you can get some really cool bokeh, both, distance shots and up close. I prefer to kind of find that happy medium, whatever that distance is. You'll know when I'm trying to set up different cinematic compositions and stuff like that, this is really, really hefty. Super fun. Again, weighs a lot, so I either choose this one or this one, but yeah, it is a really fun portrait and a film lens. Next is the 70-200 2.8. Use this for so many things. I love compression. I love the way it dials in different focal lengths and just the cinematic value that it brings. This is a huge one for me, with landscapes to people to bring in a lot of depth of field in between subjects, I think is really key. So that's a sweet one. 16-35, I probably use the least. Well, that and the macro, but this is obviously a big lens for shooting underwater in the house scene, so that's huge. I shoot with like the Aquatech house scene Elite 2 or something. I'm sure there's other great ones out there, but this 16-35 2.8 is huge for me to open up that. And a lot of like wider gimbal stuff we use at times I think is really key, but incredible sharp lens. Next, the 35mm 1.4. I switch between this, and I would be using my 24mm up here as well, but that's also being used to film at times. But yeah, 35 is very key. I shoot a lot of stuff with this. This has been a workhorse for me. Of course, 35mm through film and everything. It's just a wide, generic focal length that I think if I had to get stuck with one thing the rest of my life, it'd be a 35. Next would be the 50. This is definitely my pride and joy and bread and butter. It's the 50 1.4. I use this lens all the time for portraits, to commercial work, to lifestyle stuff, to landscapes, everything. I think it's a really sweet lens and brings in a nice depth of field that I think is really money for me. That's kind of just my basic lineup. Again, the one I don't have up here is just the 24mm 1.4. That's huge for lifestyle and shooting low light and things like that. It's really small and light, and that's really fun to integrate in. But yeah, I would say out of all times, it's usually like the 105, 70-200, and of course 50 and 24 are huge. Sometimes I'll use a 24-70. It just depends, but again, it's not all about the gear that you use. These are just the gear lenses I use because I have a certain look and a feel of what I'm trying to accomplish and incorporate into my work. So this is kind of what I use. Again, if I could get stuck with a lens, it just have to be a 35 or a 50. I think those are key, and I think it's a really good challenge for you to be stuck with one lens for a while too. Obviously, I didn't accumulate this over a week's time. It took time, build it. You know, a lot of lenses I used to use, don't use anymore that I've sold, and some that I've just held on to. So yeah, don't get too focused on gear, but if you did want to know the things that I'm shooting with, this is the lineup.